it's pretty awesome to get an opportunity to kind of meet you on this kind of platform, man.
Ah,
Very excited to have you on. So, Francois, tell me how you been? What you been up to?
no, I've been great, Mark. Yeah, I've been busy with a lot of amazing things the last while, just business wise and life in general. There's so many chapters unfolding that I really just appreciate, and it's good chapters. After a winter season in my life, it just feels like spring is already here. It's in full swing now.
Come on, man. I mean, that's exciting to hear. So, it's always a little bit interesting to hear about the journey. I mean, I think a
Mm.
lot of people probably still feel like spring and summer came and went, and they stuck in winter again. So, tell us a little bit about your time in this winter season. What did it look like for you? And give us a little bit of an idea of kind of what you were going through.
Yes, Mark. Yeah. I can keep you guys busy for hours because I've experienced so many emotions and well, yeah, I've gone through so many situations in this winter time that really forced me just to, it forces you to just look up and to ask God to give you, what is the right word? To give you
Inside.
wisdom, to act,
Yeah.
insight, to
Mm.
to understand why you have to go through some of these situations. Because when we're in the situation, we don't want to be there, first of all, and we don't
Yeah.
understand why we are there. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
and the strange thing is, if you look back on your life, it happens like free. It happens time and time over again. Right? It's just
Yeah.
to different degrees and different depths. And in my
Yes. Yes.
experience, it's just as if the longer I go on with life, the deeper and the more difficult those challenges and those winter times become, the colder, the darker they become. But then also on the other side, the brighter the springs are if you go
Yeah.
through the winter seasons. But for some other reason, we always think that this is the first time that we're going through something like this. It might be that specific situation that we're going through the first time, but it's not the first time that we've gone through hardships.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, so
Absolutely.
this winter just lasted a lot longer. So to answer your question, COVID hit obviously and had a big influence on business. My business particular, I went through a very traumatic experience. I deal in secondhand electronics for the
Okay.
past 10 years. It's one of my businesses. And just to give you some background of what happened, I moved all of my stock. When COVID hit, I moved all of my stock from Pretoria office to my Centurion home,
Okay.
and we weren't allowed to trade, and obviously we didn't because of the lockdown level 5. And then at some stage, when the president said, "All right, you guys can open the gates again and start trading," we started trading from home and started selling. And yeah, at some stage, the police just pitched at my home. Said, "Listen, there's a stolen device here in your possession," it happens in the secondhand industry.
Sure.
But you buy stuff that's stolen that you don't necessarily know is stolen. Because there's not a
I mean,
proper system in place. And that's where you have to have paperwork in order to make sure that you can show the police I bought it from ABC. And I had that in order because I've been dealing in secondhand goods for the past 10 years.
okay.
I had a
That's cool.
secondhand trading license and so forth. Long story short, they arrested me. They confiscated all my stock. And we're talking about a lot of stock that I've built up over a few
Okay.
years. And yeah, all of that happened. And that happened right before I had to go onto the game of Survivor, you know.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, it's like,
So
and
which
they arrest
season, which
you.
season was that?
Pardon?
Which which season was that you had to go on to? Was that season 8 or 9?
Yeah, no, season 8.
Okay.
So yeah, and all of that happened a few months before I had to go into the game, and obviously, you know, my wife was 6 weeks pregnant as well when they arrested me, and they arrest you in front of all your employees, and they arrest one or two of my employees as well. And it was like so unnecessary at that stage, and I couldn't understand why I'm going through this. But obviously now down the line, looking back, I understand why all of those things had to happen, because that was already a start of, I believe, the Lord, using circumstances to break down my ego to extent, so that I can go into the game with a completely broken ego, even though it didn't seem like it. But I went in there with faith alone, and put up a mask of a persona that, obviously I did believe. I had a lot of confidence in in the journey that was laying ahead, because I felt it in my heart that I was supposed to be there. But just the dark things that happened before the game, it really had such a big effect on my emotional state. But yeah, long story short, we got all of our stock back, you know, and yeah, we are now making a case against the police for unlawful arrest and
Okay.
loss of income for that time. But it was just a really dark season, but taught me a lot. So that is just one little tip of the iceberg of what I experienced, during my winter season this last while.
Sure, Francois. So, I mean, it's like that, I think often people who begin to realize their destiny or begin to go in the direction of their destiny, the enemy ends up trying to derail them. And
Mm.
if we go through the hammering that the enemy tries to send our way and we don't learn something out of it, then obviously we we need to do a little bit of a double take, and
Mm.
it's always important that we learn how to stand on what we believe and what we trust in during those times, so that we don't get derailed, by the enemy.
Mm.
So, well done for standing your ground and just going through that, but determining to be stronger at the end of it. I think that's a very
Mm.
important quality to have. A lot of people buckle, they kind of turn to the blame game, and they end up kind of trying to finding out, why
Yes.
is this happening to me. But I think that people need to realize is that storms come for everyone, and it's really whether you're ready for the storm or not that kind of counts. I don't think a lot
Yeah,
of people do what we call preparation.
and I like what you said. Some people doubling down on the same type of lessons because they didn't take away what they had to in the beginning. They didn't take away what they had to the first time. And just on the storms as well, we aren't always ready for the storms because they come so unexpected. But I think we should accept that they are going to come unexpected, and then we should trust that we are going to go through it some other way. And it's always very easy to say it when you're standing on the outside and you're looking at the eye of the storm. But it's so much more difficult when you're in the eye of the storm and you're like, man, it's difficult to remember. Oh, I've been through this 10 times before, just to different degrees. I'll go through this again. I think that's what we should remind ourselves about as well. That's why we should
Yeah.
count our trials and tribulations as blessings.
Well, that's kind of what the book of James tries to communicate when it says, count it all joy when you face trials of various kinds.
Yes.
Because you know that when your faith is under pressure, that produces in you a form of steadfastness that in its end will leave you perfect and lacking nothing. And very often we forget that Jesus said that whoever hears these words of mine and does them is like a man who builds his house on a rock. And whoever hears these
Yes.
words and don't do them, he is like a man who builds his house on the sand. And both of these
Mm.
people will encounter storms. It's just whether they are on a rock or if they're on the sand. And I think sometimes we think we're building on a rock, but we're often built on sand, and we end up finding in the midst of the storm, oh, okay, I forgot to patch up that leak, or the foundation's a little weak here. And if we're observant, we're able to correct those things and learn from them and secure ourselves for future storms if we remind ourselves to be ready out of season and in season at all times. So, and that's awesome. Very, very exciting. I want to hear a little bit more about what it's like for someone like yourself to be in Survivor. Obviously, I think a lot of people might have questions about that, like, what is the psychological toll it takes? What does a kind of average day feel like? Those kind of things. Are you cool to discuss some of that stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's such a unique experience that you cannot compare to anything on earth. And it tests you on every level, psychologically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, even, And not a lot of people know it, but it was an even bigger spiritual experience for me than anything else. Obviously, the physical and emotional side the mental side was tough and experience in their own way as well. But the spiritual side is so valuable for me, and I'll just touch a little bit on everything. So if I just have to go back from right to the start, just the entering into believing that you have the ability to go out and go do something like that is already a point in life that not a lot of people reach, where they know the vehicle that they are in, and they know their abilities, and they know they can be pushed to certain extents. And I believe if you've gone through some storms in life, like we all do, and you realize you've gone through them, you will most probably enter something like this much easier, because it's so similar to life in the sense that it's a microcosm of life. It's life compressed into 40 days. It's like if life was a steam room, the Survivor would be a steam pot, which is like a pressure cooker. That is what it is. It's the same as a steam room. It's just a pressure cooker. The pressure is so much higher. The temperature is so much higher. That is just a little analogy of what the game is. So once you start entering, it's already the journey begins, because then you're now like, okay, well, I've entered for something that I don't know what I'm letting myself in for, but I assume it's going to be amazing, and I've got an idea of what it's going to be like. It's going to be a little bit of a vacation with maybe a bit of hunger here and there, a little bit of an island holiday. That's the idea that most of the people have that enter. Pardon?
Is that how they sell it?
Yeah. Well, everyone sees the island and the beautiful brown bodies and the games, and it looks like all fun and games, And there's a big part of it that is, but you don't see the deeper sides, the deeper experiences that people have to go through. So obviously the entering process is quite a process in itself, because they have to make sure that whoever they cast is going to play the game and not leave on day 3. And then the casting process can take up to 3 months, where you go through different hoops. And then once you get the call that, listen, you are on, then it's like, you cannot explain it. You get butterflies in your stomach. It's like, there's no way to describe the emotions you experience once you know, man, okay, there's no pulling out now. I've signed up for this. I'm going. I'm leaving my family for 2 months, and I'm going to the desert, because that is what it was for me. It was like you're going to the desert away from everyone else, but I did not know to what extent the desert was going to play a role in on your emotions and on the physicality. So that's the first part. Then we get to the pre-game, where you now isolated, for a few days, and you don't have any contact with family members. You don't have any technology to contact anyone on the outside world. You only have a
Right.
TV, and you can read books. So you can maybe watch some DSTV and you can read books. And you isolated. 3 times a day there's a knock on your door, food gets delivered. You open the door, you get the food, you go back to doing what you did in the room, whether it was building puzzle, reading book, watching TV, sleeping, and that journey, that in itself is also such a precious time being alone, because it forces you to face yourself and to just be quiet and to think of your loved ones and to think of everything you have back home, because you can't communicate with them anymore. And you're like, man, on day 3, when you're in that hotel, in that hotel room, you're like, whoa, I actually love my wife much more than I thought. I knew I loved her, but now I'm like, man, why am I crying when I sing the song? Because, so what happens is I feel you get disconnected from the world, but you get so much more connected, closer to your heart, and I believe to God's heart as well.
Yeah.
And I also had my guitar in the room, so I played a lot and also sang a lot of worship songs, like "O Raise a Hallelujah." I sang a lot because I went into the game with that as my ammo. I was like, I'm going to be here to make an impact, Lord. Use me. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't know how impact looks, but this vehicle is ready if you can use it. And I know this vehicle can do a lot of stuff, but Lord, show me what it can do. And that's the mindset that I went in with. And I also knew I was a sheep among a lot of wolves, because there's a lot of people out there that, that really can play the game well and much better than I can. And if they really wanted to, they could have kicked me out on day 1, And I went in with this. Sorry, I'm speaking a lot. You must stop me if I must. Yes, I went in with this confidence and this belief that I already won the game, and that the Lord is going to use me to do it in some other way, and that I will someday be able to tell people, listen, the Lord already put in my heart that I won the game before I entered the game. And so I entered it, and I believed so much that I won it that in all my interviews, I would say, if people would say, so, even the casting interviews, if people would say, so what what will you do with the money if you win the game? Then I will say, no, I already won the game. I will still decide what I do with the money once I get it. So it's on the brink of arrogance, but it was having so much faith and confidence in just the feeling that I had in my heart that I already won the game. And I only later I realized what that feeling was, and I'll get to that now. Mm-hmm. So then we get to the stage where you enter the game. And then it is as if you are born into a new world. And that is where the spiritual correlation with our world comes is so clear for me in the Survivor game. So then you obviously go through the game. Every second day you've got a challenge. In life, every few minutes, every hour you've got a challenge. You're born in life. Yes. Well, your birth in life is from your mother's womb. Your birth in the game is just on a beach where you stand, and you're exposed to all this new people and this new environment. Out of your comfort zone, and from day 1, you have to go through challenges. Your birth in life, from day 1, you got to learn how to crawl. You got to learn how to, to drink milk. You got to learn how to fight for yourself. And so there's so many similarities. And you are also not from this life. You are a being that's entered into a human body, but you're not from this place. I believe we've always existed with God in the form of unconditional love, and that is my personal opinion, especially after our experiences. You've always existed within God as unconditional love. You just now enter the game of life as Mark, just as I entered the game of Survivor as Chappies. But I'm not from the game. I'm actually Chappies from Centurion. You see what I'm saying? And that I started realizing that deeper into the game, and I also realized how people forget that they are actually not born in this game, because they start reacting as if they are from this game and as if their lives depend on everything that they do in this game, and that then causes emotions to take over and people to do certain things that they would regret later on. Just very similar to what we do in life. We sometimes forget that it's just a game. It's a very important game that we are in the game of life, because you've got a story to tell and there's souls to be won. But the deeper we go into life, the more we forget that we are not from this place and that we're not going to be here always. Some of the time, your torch is gonna be snuffed, and you're gonna have to return home. And that was a massive revelation for me, going deeper into the game. I'm just so thankful that God made me aware of that, because I asked him to remind me that, I've actually got my life back home. This is not my life. This is just the experience that I have to go through in order to tell a story that he wants me to tell.
So, Chappies, tell me, in say, let's say day 10, did it start to feel more kind of familiar for you, or was it still very foreign?
If you say it, what do you refer to? If you say did it?
By day 10, after you've faced some challenges and you've clearly, you've made it through the first quarter of the game, did it feel more familiar? Did you feel like you were getting more of a handle on it, or did you feel like you were still pretty much, trying to grapple with a lot of things and come to grips with a lot of things?
You don't. My experience was I didn't ever feel that I had a grip on the game, or that I'm starting to feel more familiar. I started to feel more comfortable because I accepted my situations, and accepted certain outcomes. So I started to feel very comfortable and appreciate the discomfort that I was going through in a weird way, because every time it would rain, I would lay next to the fire and try to fall asleep. I would remind myself that this is such a privilege. You'll never most probably be able to experience this again. Yes, and it is it's uncomfortable, and you are cold and you miss your family. But think about the times when you're back at home and you're going to be able to tell them about this, and you're going to be able to tell them about how much you love them, how much you miss them. But there's certain barriers that you break through on different days, and each barrier is more difficult to break through. Like day 3 was crazy because you haven't slept for 3 days, you're so hungry, you're soaking wet, and then your mind starts to mess with you, and you're like, what am I doing here? Well, why did I sign up for this again? And then you cry next to the fire along with the other castaways. You cry and you're like, why did we do this again? And then in that moment as well, to remind yourself that it's a unique experience. It's an experience that you're only going to have for a short little while. 40 days of entire life is 40 days is a drop in the ocean compared to your entire life. So just push through the next hour, just push through the next minute, the next day, and then day 7 is another barrier. Day 14 is another barrier. So although you become more comfortable with the environment and you start to accept, that you're in this situation, the barriers just become more difficult as you go further. Like in life, for me, the challenges just become more difficult and darker and deeper, but so also the victories are also brighter and more beautiful. So no, you do not get comfortable completely as you move into further with the game. There's these barriers that you have to break through, and each and every time it's like an onion. Like day 3, there's a little bit of, if your soul is an onion, if you as a human being, if you are an onion, on day 3 there's layers that's peeled off. On day 7, a little bit more of layers peeled off. Day 14, day 24, and then if you allow it and you're going with the right attention, all these layers get peeled off, and then at the end you're only left with a core being that you are. And that is so holy and so beautiful experience. And that is what I experienced. I went through it, almost all the way, and these onion layers were broken down so much that the only thing that was left at the end, when I lost the last challenge and I fell down on the floor, was like just a core unconditional love that we are, that I believe we as human beings are. And it's in that moment that I just got this message in my heart that the Lord said, right here is where you're enough, right here where you have nothing, right here where all your business back at home, all the stock is still confiscated, and you don't, your business might fold. You haven't seen your family in the past 2 months, but your body is broken down. I've lost 12 kilograms. I've lost a lot of muscle mass. I looked like a homeless person next to the street in the sense of how thin I was, and my cheeks and everything. So right here, where you've got nothing that you can identify with, is exactly where I want you to be. And it's exactly where you are enough. This core being that you are, that is enough for me. That is the message I got. And that, in a sense, was a rebirth for me as well. That was like awakening, if I can put it that way. That was like, okay, Lord, so I don't actually need my home and my car, and I don't need all the people that I believe I need, although I appreciate them, but I'm enough just as I am, even at my lowest, with no one around me. And that was the most valuable thing that I took from the game.
Just listening to you, Chappies, do you think that people have allowed, to a large degree, materialism to become something of an idol in their lives, especially around what they have determining who they are?
100%. 100%. Once you find your identity in something else, I believe it's idolism. And it could be materialistic things like objects, or it could be people, because we do that as well.
I think a lot of people have this idea that they have to look for love and acceptance, and they have to find a place to belong. And I'm not saying that it's bad to belong anywhere, or it's bad to, find people who are willing to encourage you. I'm not saying that that's bad, but I find that when a person's identity is wrapped up in that acceptance that comes from a particular group or ideology, it tends to become quite dangerous, because especially if it's not rooted in God and what He's done for us, because then it ends up being something that can be taken away from you, that can make you feel that you've once again either experienced a massive loss or you've been rejected. Have you ever felt like that in your life, like where you felt like you suffered some severe rejection or something like that, that maybe you could speak into for some of our listeners and watchers, obviously, who are watching right now, to kind of identify with that, and how and this experience that you had at the end of Survivor, and how those two might tie up?
Yeah. So rejection and humiliation I've experienced so many times in my life, and I can think of different times. The one time that comes up in my mind, I was probably 11 years old. So let me just also say, I'm very confident now, and I know what vehicle I have to work with to play this game of life. But it wasn't always like that. And I think that's what people always think that, yeah, he was just born this way. It's not the case, you know. I you I took the hardships that came on my way, and it was used for my benefit then moving forward. I believe, you know, I learned what I had to learn through the hardships, and that's why I can today say I'm confident and know who I am. And I'm not referring to Chappies, I'm referring to the soul that I am. But just to go
Sure.
back to your question, that led up to me being or knowing who I am today is, yes, I had to go through a lot of humiliation and rejection, especially when it came to relationships earlier in my life. So when I was like 11 years old, we were at this holiday resort. I remember I saw this beautiful girl, and we started chatting to her, and then a few moments later, a well-built guy came in, and he like just started chatting to the girl. I never heard of her again. And at that stage, I was still a little chubby man, and I felt so rejected. And I can still remember telling my grandma that time, "Oma, you know what? This girl ditched me, and it must be because I'm so fat." And so, and I felt very rejected. But instead of crawling like into a shell, I decided I want to do something about this. And then I started working out more often that time, you know. And then what you should watch out for is, it's a good thing, because now you've used a bad situation to adapt a good habit. But now we must watch out for, so you don't go like extra other side, which I also went, where everything just started to go about the looks. It's, I was like, all right, now I want to look the best. And it's, if I have a good body, I'll have a beautiful girl as well, which is once again where we identify with how we look. It's materialistic with
Yes,
how you
correct.
look. And then if you go too far down that path, you'll burn your fingers if you do not learn the lessons that you do. And luckily, I learned the lessons that I had to, I believe, early enough, so that I didn't have to suffer very severe consequences. That's just one example. Let's just see. Yeah, I also think back at a time in varsity. So I was 21 years old, and I was studying for mechanical engineering. And my dad, that time, he was a very good doctor. He was one of the best doctors, I believe, in South Africa, in the world, because he really just cared for people. But
That's good.
but he had a mental struggle.
Oh, okay.
And at the age of, I think, 43, he took his own life, and I was
Oh, that's
21 at that stage. And I remember just the emotions I experienced, because none of us saw it coming. We knew he was suffering some form of depression, But now I'm in
sure.
varsity. I'm second year mechanical engineering. Now I'm like, man, I have to now care for my mother and my sister. Mark, you must say if I must hurry up or so. I don't want to keep you
No,
up,
carry
but I
on.
just, yeah.
Are you enjoying the
So
conversation?
yeah, absolutely. It's lucky for me.
Sure, sure.
And you must
Carry
also
on.
tell me if I don't want to babble too much.
Don't worry, I'll interrupt you. I'm pretty good at that. I'm a
Okay.
good interrupter.
Okay. Yeah. So my dad then passed away, and I was like, someone's got to care for my sister and my mother, so I've got to pass all my tests. And at some stage, I flunked calculus tests, which is very hard maths. It's in-depth maths. And what I then thought is, listen, with the day when I wrote the test, I actually got a second copy that I took and put in my bag, and I was like, I'm gonna go and just study this test at home and see where, if I entered the correct results or the correct answers. When I got my test back, I realized I got 10%. If I can remember correctly, I was like, man, I can't have 10% for tests now. My father died. I got to pass all my tests. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the other copy test that I had. I'm going to slip 1 or 2 papers in, fill in the right answers, go to the lecturer and tell her, listen, ma'am, you missed a few of the pages here. You see, they stuck together. So you can maybe just remark my test. Maybe I can get 20 or 30%, and that might pull me through. So I did that. Little did I know that these lecturers have dealt with thousands of students that are very clever. So these lecturers are very clever. And behind every page, she made a unique mark. And that's a habit that she has when marking pages. So that if anyone ever puts in another page, that she'll notice that another page was put in there. And then she called me in the day. She's like, Mr. Chapman, we suspect that there's another page put in here. But she didn't tell me about the markings, I said, no, ma'am, it must have probably stuck together. It must have been some sweets or something. So I think you made a mistake. You missed these pages. She says, are you really sure, Mr. Chapman? Because we suspect there's some fraudulent activity in this test. I'm like, and you see our life and our God works. It's like you do get opportunities to correct your mistakes. Because I believe if I told her there, yes, ma'am, you know what, you caught me out. I'm sorry. Let me just take my 10% and leave the office. Thank you very much. I would not have gone through what I'm going to tell you now. So then she said, all right, Mr. Chapman, so we might send this, she said, all right, Mr. Chapman, we'll get in contact with you again. And a few days later, I got a call from the law department there at Tux. And they're like, Mr. Chapman, please come in. And I must know, when you see a private number call on your phone, you start to shiver because you know you are in the wrong and you know they are catching up on your trail. And then I went to the lady that I can't remember her name, but she is it's one of the most cool-hearted people that I've ever dealt with. And I don't know if it's a persona or she's become like that over the years, dealing with students and just being cutthroat, black and white, she also presented the test with me and said, say again?
I said, I think over time, you get desensitized to being empathetic towards people because they are all trying to pull a fast one. So you just end up having to be called.
And so she called me and she said, Mr. Chapman, this is the case. The lecturer told us that she believes there's extra pages in here. Are you sure you didn't cheat in this? And I'm like, I stood my ground. I still said, no, I'm sure. She said, listen, we're going to send this for forensics. I called the bluff. I said, okay, no, it's fine. You can send it for forensics. I don't know what it entails, but you can send it. They send that paper for forensics. They analyze the mood you were in when you wrote on the one paper and when you wrote on the other paper. They analyze the ink of the pen that you were in, the surface area that you wrote on. Caught red-handed. And that was now 5-6 months after my dad passed away. And I phoned my mom and I felt so ashamed because now I cheated in a test and I might be expelled from varsity. That's the right word, And my mom said, okay, no, you made a mistake, but I'm going to help you through this. Let's see, let's get a lawyer, because you can now, it becomes a kind of a court case in the university system. We got a lawyer and we explained everything to him. And then we had the kind of a setup in the chamber at the university, where you've got the people that accuse you, the prosecutors, You've got a entire proper court set up right there in a
Your
office
head.
in University of Pretoria. Now, 6 months ago, my dad passed away. Now, this is the next thing that I'm facing. Like, you might not be able to study this anymore. Long story short, they gave me a suspended sentence of, a suspended sentence because of my circumstances. And they said it was the first time in 10 years that it happened. They said, no, so because your dad died, we're going to give you, we understand, we're going to give you a suspended sentence, but you got to do the following three things. You have to repeat the subject, you have to pay a 10,000 rand fine, and you have to go do some library work, a few hours of library work. I was like, I walked out there and I couldn't believe what just happened. Like, I was so grateful. So I went to go redo the subject. I paid the 10,000 rand, and I pitched at the library like every third week. I would say, listen, I'm here to do some library work, for a sentence that I got, and it's some it's communion work or something like that. I can't remember what they call it. And they would say, no, community work. And they would say, no, sorry, we don't know what you're talking about. And I would go away, and I'm like, go after a month again. I'm here to do some community work. Just want to know, can I do something? Can I help with the books or whatever? No, we're not aware of anything like that. No, please go ask that person or that person. And then the entire year goes by, and the next year came. And then I went to go gym again at Tux Gym, and I swiped my card. And this is now beginning of the new year. And the lady said, sorry, it says here that you're suspended. I'm like, no, that can't be. She says, yeah, it does. Okay, I went rushed to the Raw building. I came up there and I was like, listen, what's going on? I know, I got a suspended sentence, which means it will only take effect if you do not do the three things. And then the lady said, yes, Mr. Chapman, you did not complete your community work. I'm like, so she said then, so that means your sentence is now in order. So now, because you did not complete those three things, now you're going to be suspended for a year. I was like, I couldn't believe what I heard. Just because the community work wasn't done, but I really put in an effort to go and do the community work, but I had no proof of that as well. And then I was suspended for a year, and that was so humiliating. And in that year, I told people, now I took off to do some music. And strange enough, I did do music in that year. And this is also the beauty of the entire story is I learned how to do business. I did some music. My sister and I produced a CD. We started a band. And one of our band members was a lady. And this lady had a beautiful friend. And today I'm married to that beautiful friend of that lady. So
amazing.
If in years I see the bigger picture, if my dad did not pull the trigger, I would have not experienced the pressure to cheat in my test to pass. I would have not been suspended for a year. I would have not been able to produce my own CD and start my own band. So I believe I would most probably not been able to meet my wife. So that's why there's
clearly opportunities all around us, and the reality is that one of those things is that if we go through these things and we learn from them, we're able to see the opportunities that arise because of them, and it's so exciting to hear from you just how, in spite of the mistakes you've made and some of the decisions you made that clearly, could have ended up a lot worse, God was able to save you from, I think, yourself a lot of the times, and really bring you onto a greater track. I see Andrew's back with us. Are you back on voice, Andrew? or are you still
I
busy?
think I am. Can you hear me? Am I in the room
Yeah,
with you
yeah, we
right
can hear
now?
you. A little bit louder
Like
would be
I
great.
can hear you.
Yeah. I caught a bit of that. I like where you guys are going with this. Any discussion about overcoming hardship, and I'm in. I like it because I believe that I've got this theory about when you're in the like Joseph was thrown in the pit, right? Then he gets pulled out of the pit, and he gets put in the chain gang in that long slavery caravan, and there he would have taken advice from people. Oh, sorry, am I a bit soft? I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm soft.
Yeah.
Um, is that better? Do I sound all
Yes,
manly,
yes.
Yeah,
Mannington of the
that sounds
Mandals
better.
now? Okay, so Joseph he's put in this chain gang from where he's like the favorite. And now suddenly he's taking advice from people he would never have taken advice from before. He's hanging out with people who he would never have hung out with before. And that prepares him to be an excellent servant, for Potiphar's household because he's learning to govern. And,
Oh,
as
mm,
fancy pants, spoilt, fancy jacket Joseph, favorite of the household, he would never have taken this advice. He would never have sat at the feet of mentors because, it's only adversity that teaches you that you actually need to listen. And even then, he achieves whatever level is required of him for his destiny, and then the false accusation comes. A very similar thing happened to David. So David is in the palace. He's everybody's favorite boyki. He's married to probably one of the most beautiful women in the nation,
mm,
King Saul's daughter. Because, those guys got to choose from the hottest chicks who their wife's going to be.
yeah,
So their daughters were next level. He's a tall dude. So you can imagine his wife was probably David's, wife's probably like a 15 out of 10, like,
yeah,
and, his bum is in the butter. He's in the palace. He's been anointed the next king. And the only way that he can learn how to be a king is for God himself. God sent that spirit of torment on King Saul to throw the spear at David, chase him out.
sure.
And then David ends up in the caves where he's going to go and learn how to lead difficult men, real warriors. Because if he's going to
You,
be a king who's got to take down consistently all the kites and the ites, Amalekites and Philistines and
yeah,
Philistines and jeans that are too
yeah,
tight and whatever, he's got to go and learn where he never would have learned before. And then he goes and works for the Philistines, and there he learns subversion and strategic thinking, because he says to the Philistines, he says no, he's protecting them, but in reality, he's harassing. His men are harassing the Philistines. But anyway, and then so when he comes back, he's a protector. He's learned how to govern. He's learned how to lead strong men, how to have strong men look up to him. Whereas that little teenage boy in the palace with his 15 out of 10 wife, with bum in the butter, anointed man of the hour, flower of the power, he's useless as a king. He would have just been. He was already bad in his moral judgments. But you go back to Joseph, similar situation. Joseph, the only way that God could get that guy out of Potiphar's household was false accusation and prison.
sure.
And then
You,
in prison, he gets to
yeah,
prove himself on a governance level, like government. There's no higher financially powerful responsibility than governmental governance, like working for the government. Because Elon Musk deals in billions, governments deal in trillions, So
yeah,
to be elevated to that position that Joseph needed to go, he need to have uncommon training. It's like a whole other level. And we often I don't know why God's punishing you. Often he's training you, preparing you, because he knows your heart. He
yes.
knows you're not dodgy. So he'll put you in the chain gang himself. He's not testing you, he's training you. You don't, like people think, what's he got to test you for? He doesn't, he knows you
Yo,
already.
I can relate. I can relate with what you're saying, eh? And here's the thing. If you really put in the effort, you're going to see that the stories from the Bible actually repeat in our lives, just with different characters, different situations. But this main storyline kind of repeats. I don't know if you guys have also realized
A
that.
recipe's a recipe, man. You don't fix what's not broken, you know? I mean, if it
Yes.
works to produce David and it works to produce Joseph, the Chancellor of Egypt, it's going to work on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the
Absolutely.
truth is that all those who live godly in Christ will face persecution, and persecution will always arise. And how we face persecution is going to determine how our characters are shaped and molded. You know, you can pour your heart and soul out in many different instances, and the only way that a lot of people will find any kind of promotion in the spirit will be if there's a massive rejection. You look at Jesus' own disciples, and you can see how Judas was the one that basically betrayed Jesus, and that was probably one of the deepest betrayals that there could be. And Jesus still continues to love Judas regardless of what has happened to him.
Mm.
And I mean, there are many, many believers who are still learning how to love their enemies the way that Jesus was willing to love his. And I think
Yes.
that in every situation, if we choose to listen to the voice of God and the guidance of the Holy Spirit, we'll be able to get that wisdom we need to overcome and learn how to be better prepared for the next time the enemy tries the same kind of shenanigans. So absolutely, it's one of those fundamental important things to realize that when tough things happen, they happen because life is tough, but you are tougher. And with God, you can do all things. You're not alone. He's with you. It's just an opportunity for you to lean more on him and his understanding in the situation.
Hardship has got this this habit of making you feel like you're the only one. You know, like
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
got the
it does.
meanwhile. I mean, hell, you know, I'm 48 years old. I've lived 500 lifetimes. I'm telling you, just failed at things that should have succeeded. You know, rejected by people who should have loved me. You know, messed up with people that I should have loved. You know, like luckily never with a girl. I behave myself there. You know, been married for 24 years. So, but like stuffed up. You know, Paul himself, Paul the Apostle says, you know, the things I want to do, I don't, and the things I don't want to do, I do, because it's a battleground. And then he says, but listen, just try and figure out how to rejoice in your tribulations, because your tribulations have actually got a job to complete, and that's to produce vision in you. This hope and vision are interchangeable as a word, you know. So how old are you now, Chappies? You look like you're young, man. You're in your 30s or what?
Yeah. I'm 33, turning 34
yes,
next year.
Man. Yes, I
Yeah.
was only bankrupt twice by the time I was 33.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you got an
I was
awesome
on the
situation.
verge, so I can almost relate.
Yeah. No, yes, sir. I'm excited to see what God's going to do through you. But yes, we'd love to have you on again.
Thanks,
the little snippets I was catching, I double booked myself somehow in a seminar. So I was like half ear, half in, half out, and I enjoyed. You know, Overcomers is really about being able to let movers and shakers hear each other's stories, and especially this podcast. You know, let me tell you, when I was coming up, not that I went up anywhere, I kind of went sideways, and I'm very happy where I am. But when I was coming up, I always thought, you know, these pastors and these business guys, these guys, all these success, they never talk about the pain they went through to get there. They always talk about these principles and you can do it and you can do it. No one's talking about what you actually went through, like the emotions, the frustration, the anger, the loss of faith. I was basically a Christian atheist, you know, for like 10 years or something, you know, because I thought, you know what, I like what the teachings about Jesus, what he says, but I cannot, my understanding can't reconcile a father who'll murder his own son, allow millions to starve, it's not working for me. I don't understand, and no matter who I ask, how's God blessing that guy but not me? Why? I work harder. Because I'm a hard work. I'm a 20-hour-a-day guy. Look, why is he succeeding? What's all this rubbish about blessed when you come in, blessed when you go out? They pay my tithe. The locust has party on me, man.
I can relate to what you're saying. I can relate to what you're saying, Andrew. And I think in those situations, even when they pop up now, when you like, I'm blessed when I go in, I'm blessed when I go out. We sometimes have the perception or perspective or idea of what a blessing means or how it should look like, but we don't understand that we already just breathing is being part of this game of life. It is the blessing. The rest is also little add-ons. But we say the blessing. That's why I find it difficult when people say that when something good now happens that you're blessed, because you're blessed actually all the time. It's not just when something good happens. When something good happens,
I really liked what you were saying there when you were talking about the end of your time in the Survivor, and where you found yourself kind of like, I would say kind of, you could call it naked and afraid, but you weren't naked and afraid. You were just kind of stripped down to the bare essentials. And the truth is that there's so many people who are born into that and live in that place and actually never have a end of 40 days. They're constantly in that place. And you can imagine if all that they experience is that, what kind of view
that is how that is why I believe
this is what Overcomers is about. We want to destroy that. We don't want that for anyone, bro.
So hell is I believe, of what I know of my experience on earth, hell is a place on earth. In a sense, it's what you are allowing yourself to go through now with a situation that you are in. Because for some people, that laying on the ground, bare naked, with everything stripped from you is hell. But in that moment, it was the closest to heaven that I've felt, having nothing. And that's so what. A lot of people that's going through for longer than 40 days, through those situations. I believe it's because, first of all, they're not open to take away or to learn what they should from that situation, and they do not realize yet that even though they are in that very difficult situation, that it's still a blessing to be alive. It's still a blessing to experience the emotions that you go through in those difficult situations, and we don't take that perspective on it. It's a privilege to experience fear, and why I say that is because. And anxiety, because you now know how it feels. If you never experience fear, anxiety, it's like not having,
When the guys are screaming and shouting and they're like going on about hell in eternity, I'm like, okay, well, let's just help people through the hell on earth first. Let's prioritize where we are. God's 100%. And I'm not a fan of the whip. The whip produces very good liars and actors. You act a lot more, if there's a whip involved. Like when you're a teenager, you just learn to lie. But anyway, I think I'd like to do a part 2. We've got to end now. I don't know if you're keen to come on again sometime. And
it will be amazing.
Chatting. Okay, love that. Philip, you got a relationship with Philip, and then we'll set it up again. Thank you so much, Chappies. That was really great. I picked up the stompies here and there in the few moments now, listening to you share now. I think you got so much wisdom and you're so genuine. And
thanks so much, guys.
And thanks for opening yourself up, man. A lot of people will watch this. Okay. Bless you guys.
Just a privilege.
Peace.
Thanks, guys. Bless you. See you again.